5-person team risked their lives to climb the Ural Mountains, all just to investigate a bizarre mountaineering tragedy, the Dyatlov Pass Incident, which is known as one of the world's top 10 unsolved mysteries. Rumor has it that on February 2, 1959, 9 people climbed the snow-capped mountain and died in strange circumstances. Yet the search and rescue team found 11 bodies. Even more eerie was the fact that all of them were missing organs without exception. Experts also found large amounts of radioactive substances on the victims' clothes. But because the incident site was near a Soviet military base, the government classified the case as top secret, and the truth has been hidden ever since. Determined to uncover the truth, Rose recruited a mountaineering team and decided to go to the original incident site. However, as soon as they set foot on the Ural Mountains, strange things started happening one after another. Early the next morning, the group set up their cameras ready to film, but just then, a scream suddenly rang out from the crowd. It turned out someone had found 2 sets of unusual footprints outside the tent. These footprints were twice the size of a normal person's, and they were barefoot. Even weirder, the 2 sets of footprints were intermittent. There was no sign of where they started, yet they seemed to be leading the team to a certain place. So, Rose and the others followed the footprints to a weather tower. She noticed there seemed to be something in the cabinet on the tower, so she opened it to check. Inside there was actually a bright red tongue. It was still steaming, clearly cut off not long before. The group panicked immediately, but they had already missed the time to go down the mountain, so they had no choice but to set up camp and rest where they were. That night, Rose's radiation detector suddenly started beeping. She quickly tracked down the source based on the signal fluctuations. There was actually a steel door there. She called Jack over to help, but the steel door was covered in snow and ice, making it impossible to open. So the two went back to the camp, planning to use hot water to melt the ice and snow on the steel door. But just then, a loud rumble stunned everyone. Someone stepped out of the tent to check, only to turn pale with shock. An avalanche was rushing straight toward the team. Everyone grabbed their equipment and fled in a hurry. But the avalanche was much faster than they had imagined. In the blink of an eye, some team members disappeared into the avalanche. They ran toward the edge as fast as they could, finally escaping the avalanche just in the nick of time. But some members were still hit and injured, losing the ability to move. Now, they had lost all their food and equipment. With 3 people left plus the injured, they couldn't go far at all. The only thing that could save them now was the flare gun in Jack's hand. He aimed at the sky and fired a flare, then told Logan about the steel door together with Rose. They planned to head there to find survival supplies. Just as the group was heating up some water, 2 figures suddenly appeared in the distance. Rose, as if clutching at a lifeline, hurried to shout for help. But what greeted them was a hail of bullets. Watching the injured team member get shot dead on the spot, and with nowhere nearby to hide, Rose quickly grabbed the hot water and rushed toward the steel door. But melting the ice and snow still took time, and Logan was shot by the attackers because of the delay. Just as the attackers were closing in, the 3 of them managed to get inside the steel door. But before they could even feel relieved, they heard the sound of the steel door locking behind them. Only then did Rose realize the team had walked right into the attackers' trap long ago. Now all they could do was pray. There was another exit somewhere. Using the camera's night vision mode, Jack found the power switch. But they hadn't taken more than 2 steps when the light suddenly exploded. Right after that, a figure appeared in front of them. Rose was so scared she hurried to lead the others in a run. They stumbled along as they fled, and finally found a room at the end of the corridor. The room was filled with damaged equipment, and precious experimental documents were scattered all over the floor. Rose helped Logan sit down in a corner, then went with Jack to look for a way out. The 2 opened an iron door, and a terrible stench rushed out at once. They held their noses and stepped inside, only to find a dead body there. The body looked like it had just died, and the clothes on it were the same as the attackers, but its tongue had been cut off. Rose immediately realized the tongue they'd seen at the weather tower had come from this body. It seemed there was a monster that even the attackers feared, trying to send them a message. Then the 2 went further inside, and finally found the source of the stench, a large number of charred bones. These bones had sharp fangs in their mouths, making it clear they didn't belong to normal humans. Just then, a noise suddenly came from outside. The 2 went out to check, and found that a tightly closed door had been opened. They walked in, and saw that the iron hooks on the wall were still swaying, with blood still remaining on the floor. Clearly, some creature had escaped from here. Jack looked around warily, urging Rose to evacuate as soon as possible. But at that moment, Logan's scream suddenly came from outside. The two rushed out to see what was happening, only to watch Logan get torn to pieces by a monster. Before they could react, the monster suddenly charged at Jack, grabbed his head and was about to devour him. In that critical moment, Rose picked up a chain from the floor and threw it. The chain hit the two monsters and turned them to ashes. She was just about to catch her breath, but another monster suddenly appeared behind her, slamming both of them hard to the ground. The two struggled to get up and fled in a hurry, but every time they reached a fork in the road, the monster would suddenly appear, forcing them to take the other path. Finally, at the end of the passage, they opened an iron door and hid in a cave. Just then, they heard the sound of the door being locked from the outside. They immediately realized the monster had been leading them here all along. Now that there was no way out, they had no choice but to explore deeper into the cave. As they went further in, Jack found some murals on the cave wall. The humans in the murals had long, slender limbs, which were very similar to the monster that had been chasing them. Jack guessed this was the place where the monsters were created. At that moment, Rose felt something unusual, and she tried touching the cave wall. A beam of white light spread from her palm to the surrounding area, then extended to the deepest part of the cave. This place seemed to lead to another unknown world. At that moment, Jack remembered the documents he had seen earlier in the laboratory. Back in the day, the Soviet Union had used a mysterious passage to conduct teleportation experiments on warships, but the final result was that the soldiers merged with the warships. Those who survived also turned into monsters. It seemed this was that mysterious passage. By then, the camera's battery had completely died, and the two were plunged into total darkness. Now there was only one path left for them, to go into the deepest part of the cave. The two held hands, trying their best to imagine something good happening. Then a flash of white light appeared, and on the Ural Mountains on February 2, 1959, two more bodies suddenly appeared out of thin air. Before long, the search and rescue team found the two bodies. But just then, a group of Soviet soldiers showed up, forcing their way to take the two bodies back to the base. They skillfully stripped off the bodies' clothes and hung the emaciated corpses on iron hooks. But after everyone left, the corpses suddenly broke into a sinister smile. Next, they would lead Rose from this timeline to repeat the path they had once taken. In fact, the moment Rose's team stepped into the Ural Mountains, they had traveled through time to February 2, 1959, the exact day of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. And at that very moment, Rose and Jack, who had turned into monsters, also teleported there, becoming the two extra bodies in the incident. After being detained by the Soviet soldiers, they destroyed the Soviet military base, then tore out a soldier's tongue, and began guiding Rose step by step to complete the time loop that would create themselves.